Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning and welcome to Encounter. I'm your host today, Joe Sellepack, the Executive Director at the Council of Churches. New ministers come into our community with a lot of frequency, and last week we talked to a clergy couple, and today we're going to be speaking to Pastor A.J. Striffler. Pastor A.J., it's really nice to have you on Encounter today.
Thank you for having me.
So you're new and you're serving Christ the King Lutheran Church. You started in March?
Yes.
How have you found the transition?
Like most pastoral transitions, there are great joys and there are challenges. So the congregation itself has been very welcoming, and it's been, I think it's been a fairly easy pastoral transition. I say that, and I can tell you that I just unpacked my library 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
So we really kind of hit the ground running. And getting going with the program that we're involved in. And then, of course, there's the personal side and the grief of leaving where you've been and the people that you've left and just getting familiar with a whole new place.
Now, are you from this area originally, or are you like transplanted?
Yeah, no, I'm originally from down the road, actually, a little bit, a little place called Staten Island.
Staten Island?
Yes. Okay,
so you're out near the city then.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so this is closer to home than where you were previously, right?
Yeah. I left Staten Island after high school to go to college and then seminary and whatnot. So I never really entertained the thought that I would be a New Yorker again. But it's very exciting. It's nice to be back home.
Had you been in upstate before?
No, upstate was just this idea that those of us downstate have, it's like upstate somewhere.
Yeah. So how have you found the area?
Well, it's to be honest with you, central and upstate New York is some of the most beautiful country that I have ever encountered, and that's coming from someone who lived many years in Colorado.
Oh,
right?
Really?
There are so many similarities. The beautiful forestry and foliage and trees and just the nature. The landscape is absolutely breathtaking. We get more color though in the fall and in the spring than Colorado. Colorado has two colors: green and brown.
Green and brown.
Yeah,
exactly. And so here you'll get the maples and the oaks and the
just the beautiful.
Yeah.
And when you're driving, down 81 or across 90, and you just see the field of red and orange and yellow, and it's really just breathtaking.
It really is. So tell us a little bit about how you were called into ministry.
So I was raised in the Lutheran Church, Christ Lutheran Church, really on Staten Island, and it was just a natural part of my everyday life. And at the beginning of my sophomore year in high school, my mom died. And the church, my congregation at the time, really literally became my family. And I was also going to a private Jesuit high school in the city, in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And so I was around church all the time. And when it came time for me to start thinking about college, clearly I thought of a church college, and we actually have an ELCA college on Staten Island, Wagner.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Wagner College. But I also thought it was time for me to go someplace else and explore what life was outside of Staten Island. So I chose Gettysburg College in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, which is the oldest ELCA college, or the oldest Lutheran college, oldest Lutheran school in the country. And
Is that where you went to seminary too?
No, actually I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't. But while in college, I was studying Bible, and I had a great New Testament professor, Buzz Myers, and just studying with him and studying Scripture, it just sort of naturally progressed. And it was, what am I going to do after college? Well, clearly I'm going to go to seminary. And that is exactly what happened.
And so where did you end up at seminary?
Well, I had a Lutheran professor at Gettysburg who said, you know, AJ, if you want to be a good Lutheran pastor, you go to a Lutheran seminary. We make great pastors. But if you want to be a great Lutheran pastor, go to a non-Lutheran seminary. And it took me a long time to sort of figure out what he meant by that. He wasn't knocking any of our ELCA seminaries. We have great schools of learning, of theological learning in the ELCA. But one of the things that we get to do when we're Lutheran seminarians in a non-Lutheran setting is we get a lot more practice articulating what we believe. And what Lutherans are, and what we stand for, and our church polity. We get a lot more practice talking about that to non-Lutherans.
Right.
Whereas in Lutheran seminaries, we're all kind of talking the same language.
Right.
And it was brilliant. It was brilliant advice, and it has served me very well.
And which seminary did you end up at?
I went to the Candler School of Theology at Emory University in Atlanta.
In Atlanta.
Yep.
So you probably had Tom Long and all those.
Actually, I was pre-Tom Long.
Pre-Tom Long.
The person who occupied the chair before Tom, the bandy chair, was actually a Lutheran, a man named Robert Kaiser, who was a great
Robert
John
Kaiser.
scholar. Yeah.
Excellent. So that's a very good school.
Very good school. Yeah.
And you would have been with Presbyterians and Methodists and
the whole gamut, UCC
whole gamut.
And Baptists, and it was actually a marvelous community. I learned a lot. I had great world-renowned professors. And the nice thing was that the Lutheran Theological Southern Seminary in South Carolina had a presence at Emory.
Okay.
So I was able to actually be part of a Lutheran community while still being immersed in a very ecumenical community of learning.
All right, very good. So as you were going through seminary, you must have experienced some knowledge or understanding what your own personal giftedness is for ministry, and what do you think some of those are?
Well, I tend to be a bridge builder, and I like connecting people and things. I'm also an evangelist. I might not be the cookie cutter evangelist that a lot of people think of, but I'm never afraid to talk with people about my faith. And I'm never afraid to talk with people about their faith, even when it's different from mine. And I always like finding those points where we're more alike than where we're different. And from those places build relationship and see what God is doing in the midst of that.
That sounds like I've heard through the grapevine that your position at Christ the King Lutheran is as a renewal minister.
Yes, a transformational ministry pastor. Yes.
So what does that imply, and how does that kind of match with what your gifts are that you're talking about?
So the ELCA, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, like many mainline Protestant denominations in this country, is recognizing later rather than sooner that we are all experiencing a marked decline in church participation. Whereas 50 years ago, churches were full, and it was sort of a social contract that Americans belonged to a congregation. we're now at the opposite end of the spectrum. And the church, congregations and denominations, is really having to sort of reconnect with its biblical mission. So we're no longer clubs of like-minded people.
Right.
We're no longer groups of one particular, or maybe sometimes two particular ethnic expressions, which was big among Lutherans. I'm not so sure about Presbyterians and Methodists, but for Lutherans, that was a big part of our
We
identity.
still have a Slovakian Lutheran
Yes.
church
Mhm.
in Ascension Lutheran on Clinton Street in Binghamton. So
Yes.
that kind of goes along with your point there.
Yes. The Slovak Zion Synod is the only ethnic synod that still exists in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. So they are a partner congregation. But yeah, so that was also a big part of our identity. And now, now our congregations and congregations of every denomination are really having to wrestle with what it means to be
Right.
the church. And that's where I come in. The church assessed my giftedness for ministry after many years of serving a congregation, and they said, you know what, AJ, you have some pretty particular gifts, and we think that you would be a good, we call it redevelopment pastor. You would be a good redeveloper. So would you consider going through the training and working with congregations that are needing to reconnect with a biblical identity, deepen their spirituality? Not only form real, authentic Christian community within the existing congregation, but connect with the outside community and figure out how to build these partnerships. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? I'll do it.
And so is that something that really excites you about Christ the King Lutheran here?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm excited about all congregations that really want to chip away at a lot of the stuff that we have brought with us from the past and get back to a real biblical understanding of what it means to be God's church. And that doesn't mean that we know what it's going to look like when we're done. But the fact that there are people who are willing to do that, that excites me.
And that seems to be almost different from the cookie cutter approach that you're saying, because there's some risk involved in it. It's saying we really don't know where this whole thing is headed, that we're somehow going to come to something different and new.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting place for a congregation to be. A little nerve-wracking on one side, because you don't have all those, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go this, and then we're going to have the end product at the end. And
Right.
so you're just saying, we're going to leave this. We're going to try to work through this with God and the Holy Spirit and through our faith, and try to figure out what's going to come. Come through this, what we're going to become together as this whole thing moves.
Right.
So typically, how in a renewal, in this kind of a renewal understanding of the church, what kind of struggles, what kind of challenges kind of face you in ministry, in that kind of a.
How much time do we have?
Yeah. Well. We have 26 minutes, but
well, the biggest challenges are, of course, like you just articulated. It's open-ended. It is a process of discernment.
Right.
And we are learning that the church, as it has existed in this country in the last 100 years, we haven't really been good at making disciples who can deeply discern. We've adopted more of the culture around us, which says we want the syllabus, we want to know what the start date is, and we want to know what the end date is. And so that is the biggest challenge, is helping people realize. And so I'll throw this in. We use the book of Acts really as our textbook.